We're talking sales with Jim Bright. Jim, thanks for being with us today.
Pleasure.
First question, how did you get into sales?
Back in 1984, when I was 16 years old, I had two older brothers, both of them are engineers, and I asked them, if you're at the top of your game, if you're the best of the best, how much can you make? And the answer I was given was about $65,000, $66,000 a year.
As a top performing engineer.
Top performing, top of your game, and all I could think of was, that's just not enough. And I didn't have the eyes to become a fighter pilot, and I thought, well, what's another risky situation I can get into and make a good profit? It was sales.
Sales.
Yeah.
And we sales, oftentimes we tell you that timid salespeople have skinny kids, so it's not for the meek.
Well, you know, I'm not too skinny. Okay.
And what have you sold in your career?
I have sold shoes, I've sold water softeners, I've sold newspapers, I have sold recruiting services, which is the game I'm in right now.
What you're doing now.
I've sold front-end processors, which are $500,000 machines that hang off of mainframes. That was a long time ago.
So different strata, different levels, different industries. Yeah. But you also had an encounter through sales of at least being exposed to Zig Ziglar.
Yes, I did. I worked at one point for a water softener company selling water softener machines. Right. And the sales training included actually Zig Ziglar videotapes, right, which was my first real exposure to sales training. I'd never had any before. There was no degree you could get at school for something like that. And I became immediately fascinated by the entire process and took it upon myself to immerse myself in the knowledge base that was there. Ran out and bought a couple of books and just really buried myself in the whole process.
And one of the things we talk about is you never graduate from selling.
No,
so you're always investing in yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now you hire salespeople. So the question I have, what traits, characteristics, what are you looking for when you hire a salesperson?
I've been hiring salespeople for 12 years. There's a certain amount of voodoo involved in it, I think. There is. There's a certain amount of luck and a certain amount of prayer that has to go into it too. In the end, though, what I really look for, I look for a couple of different things. I definitely look for the heart. One thing I've learned hiring salespeople is if it's not in here, it's never coming out.
Yeah,
you can train them, you can manage them, you can coach them. If it's not in here, you're never going to get the performance out of them. That's probably number one. I look at people that can laugh. I look for people that can laugh at different situations. I look for people that have a real sense of humor about it so they're not eaten alive by the process. We're in a unique business. We sell a product that fights back.
Okay? Explain that. What do you mean by that?
We recruit people that are at the top of their game, and we market those high caliber professionals out to employers. They come together, they interview. We typically refer to that as a date, sort of like a hot date. Yeah. And my client, the employer, might make a proposal of employment to the candidate that we recruit for him, and it can get rejected. So you can make the sale on one end, but if you don't make it on the other, you don't get paid.
Series of sales.
It's a series of sales from the very first phone call all the way through to the time that person walks through the door to start their first day of work.
So your salespeople, the salespeople that produce for you, that are high performers for you, have to have a heart for it.
You have to have a heart for it. You have to be able to laugh about it. You have to understand that sales is a numbers game. In my business, it's a numbers game. You have to understand that when you get rejection, it's never personal.
Good.
They're rejecting, and I think you taught me this, it's a business decision.
Remember we talk about refusal and rejection. One's personal, one's professional.
Yeah, you can't. In fact, when I'm interviewing a candidate, when I'm telling them about our process, one of the things I tell them, if you get an offer you're not excited about, I need, want, desire, and expect you to reject it, I'm not going to go home and cry about it. Yeah. And it's true, it really is the truth. And when I'm talking to these candidates that I'm going to market to somebody else, it's amazing when you take some of that pressure off of them to see them relax and get more involved in the process. And that's very important too.
You hire a good person, they have a heart.
Yes.
What causes a salesperson to either get into a sales slump, hit that plateau and start moving down and stop performing?
The basics. Failing to follow up on the basics. It happens to me.
Oh, sure.
I've been selling successfully. I've been selling for 22 years, successfully for 17.
I can identify.
When my sales start to go down, and I keep track of my numbers, obviously, it's always about the basics. I have gotten arrogant about, oh, I don't need to do that anymore, or I've gotten sloppy and forgotten the basics. And it's always a matter of just going back, re-examining my process and looking where am I skipping the basics.
Okay.
Putting those back into the process, and it takes care of itself.
Truly. We teach process. We want to have a foundational process in which we can grow.
Absolutely.
Because what I learned the hard way through unsuccessful selling is that my personality only carried me so far, because I put a ceiling on myself just using my personality. You take the personality off and you add a process, you add a little oomph. It's amazing how far you can go in your sales career.
You really can, but it's always the basics. The personality is important. Don't sell yourself short on that.
It is.
But the basics absolutely positively have to be there every time.
I think the personality may get you in the game, but the basics, the foundation will get you around the bases and score, no doubt. You've got children.
Let me actually revisit that.
Sure.
One of the basics that I think a lot of the people in my industry forget to do is to get the little yeses. All the way along the way. You get the little yeses so that when the big yes is asked for, it's easy for them to give it to you.
Yeah.
So asking little questions with tie-down closes at the end, we're like, I'm going to reach out to you once a week to let you know what's going on with our process. Is that okay? Yes, it is.
That's a little yes.
That's just getting that little yes. It's hard for them to say no to something like that. When I skip that, when I fail to get those little yeses, it makes getting that big yes a whole lot harder.
So you actually, when that foundation, that basic isn't hit,
yes,
you actually see a decrease in productivity.
Absolutely.
Good. That's strong. That's strong.
Remember, I'm selling two different things. It's like a dating service. I've got to get two people to come together. I'm not selling a car.
Yeah.
Car has no choice if somebody wants to buy it.
Yeah.
It's a different ballgame.
Right. So it's an added sale within the steps of your process.
It's a double sale, essentially.
Yeah, good. You have children. They're coming into the sales force. They want to get, Daddy, I want to be a salesperson.
Oh my gosh.
What if you couldn't talk them out of it? What is some advice you would give them if they're starting out in their sales career?
Stick with it.
You
got to stick with it. I failed in sales for 5 years. I struggled. I had the heart. I didn't have the knowledge, and I didn't have the mentor to point out what I was missing. Okay. When I found that, it still took a little while because I had a lot of bad habits at this point I had to unlearn. But once I found that mentor, once I found that leadership style, everything kind of came into place. It took about 9 to 12 months for things to start to kind of come together for me. And once I got good at it, it took another 3 years of constant effort to become a star, to really make it happen. And I found that's actually very consistent with a lot of other things out there. There was a study, I can't quote the source because I don't know it off the top of my head, but they found that the most successful people out there, they invested 10,000 hours of their time before success really occurred. And one of their case studies was the Beatles. And the amount of time they spent playing on street corners, parties, things like that before they made it big. And they did the math on it. It was right around 10,000 hours. Yeah,
I think Malcolm Gladwell and Outliers and some of those books are now showing that. That's kind of the new number. Good.
Yeah, it takes time to get good at something. It really does. It's a craft.
But when did you know? When did you know you got it? You understood the sales game?
I knew I was getting it when I was going to work every day and realizing I can't believe how stupid I was yesterday.
That's good. That's growth.
I knew then and there that I was on the right path, and I could see it coming together. I could see what had been a mystery to me, what was not working before. I could see it coming together every single day, every phone call, every visit to a client site.
So you could see that was conscious or deliberate on your part of knowing, actually being consciously competent.
Yes.
That you knew it, that you got it, you were better than you were yesterday.
Absolutely.
You're better today. That's
and
strong.
I would revisit, when I failed, I would revisit it from top to bottom, and I would write. I like to write things out with pencil and paper, because it helps me coalesce my thoughts. And I would go back over, why did this one fail? And I never looked at it from the standpoint of what did they do wrong, what did my client do wrong, what did the candidate do wrong, what did my company do wrong. I always looked at it from the perspective of it was my fault. Where did I fail in the process, either by not recognizing it wasn't going to come together, or by failing to provide the right information so that they could make the best decision possible for themselves.
Good, thank you. Great insight. We appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We're talking sales. This was Jim Bright. We'll see you next time.